Good afternoon. Today our lesson is about multiplying and dividing with numbers that are in scientific notation. Okay, so I'll show you the shortcuts first. You can always just type everything into the calculator, but sometimes these shortcuts are a little bit faster when they work. Okay, so the shortcut is to multiply the two numbers. So 3.5 and 2 would multiply together to be 7. Then I'd bring down my times 10, and to get my exponent, I just add the two exponents. So 3 plus 5 equals 8. Okay, let's look at that one more time. So first I'm going to multiply these two numbers, 3.1 times 2.1. Now that's not something I'm doing in my head. 3.1 times 2.1. And you get 6.51. Bring down your times 10 and then add your exponents. So negative 2 plus 5 is 3. Okay, so that's the shortcut way of doing things. However, we run into some problems, and we're going to work clockwise through these questions. Where we run into issues is, say, in this next one, when I multiply 4.25 times 6.5, 4.25 times 6.5, I get 27.625. And automatically, I hope, at this point, you have an alarm going off in your mind because you can't have a double digit out here in front. Well, we can still address that. Let's finish doing this problem. We've got an exponent, so bring down our times 10, add our exponents, negative 3 plus negative 2 is negative 5. So if we want to move this exponent one more time, to put our move this decimal so that it's in the right place, okay, we can do that and get 2.7625. But then we also have to increase this exponent by 1. And some of you are going to look at that negative 4 and it doesn't feel like I increased it, it feels like I decreased it. But remember, negative numbers work backwards. Now I completely understand that some of you are going to type this into your calculator, and that's fine. So let's start this problem over again and talk about it in terms of how we would type things into the calculator, what the calculator gives us, and how we would answer it on our paper. Okay? Now, what I want you to notice is that in between any of these problems, none of these problems have any sign between the parentheses. So when two parentheses touch like that, it doesn't need a sign. We know that it means to multiply. And your calculator knows that too. So you can just type in everything the way that you see it. So starting with parentheses, 4.25 times 10 caret negative 3, close parenthesis, open parenthesis. You don't need to even hit the times key. Your calculator will know what to do. 6.5 times 10 caret negative 2, and close your parenthesis. Now what the calculator does is gives you the standard form answer, 0.0027625. And that's not what we're looking for on the homework. What we're looking for is the answer in scientific notation. So make sure you take what you get on the calculator and convert it. That means a new decimal goes after the 2, 2.7625 times 10 to the 1, 2, 3, 4 negative 4th power. Okay? And now we're going to come over to this problem over here. This is already not in scientific notation, 560. So again, here's something the calculator is going to do. Let's type this in. 560 parenthesis, open parenthesis, 2 times 10 caret 11, close parenthesis. Now, this number, 2 times 10 to the 11th power is already huge. Huge number, okay? And then we're multiplying it by 560, so it makes it even bigger. In fact, the answer to this is so big that your calculator automatically converted it to scientific notation. Now it writes the times 10 very, very small. You see the 1.12 big, you see the times 10 very small on the screen, and you see the 14 in about exponent size. So anytime that happens on your calculator, you know that the number just had too many digits to it, and it automatically, so kindly, made the scientific notation for you. Okay? So shortcut is to multiply the numbers and add the exponents, and that worked just beautifully for the first 2 problems. Sometimes you have to adjust your decimal and your exponent, but if you just want to type everything into the calculator, you can, and you don't need a time sign in between, but you do need the parentheses. All right, dividing. Again, the shortcut would be first to divide the numbers. So that means 8 divided by 2.5. And you get 3.2. Bring down your times 10. And then if before we added exponents, now we're going to subtract exponents. So 6 take away 3 is 3. Okay? So that worked out just fine. The next one. Again, we've got 6 divided by 2. And we get 3 times, bring down our times 10, and then subtract 5, take away 2 is 3. Well, we run into problems with, with that shortcut, we run into problems with, this problem. Because when I type in the 4 divided by 8, 4 divided by 8, I get 0.5. Okay? Well, we can't have a 0 in front of the decimal for scientific notation. So that's automatically going to be a red flag that comes up on this question for our shortcut. So 6 take away 3 is 3. So this looks like scientific notation. It's not. We have to fix it. So we're moving the decimal backwards by 1 place. I have to decrease my exponent by 1. So 5 times 10 to the second. And I understand that a lot of you are probably not going to want to deal with trying to remember that. And I want to talk about calculators. Okay, so if you're going to do division problems on the calculator, all right, and we look at problems like we see on the right-hand side, okay, I want you to notice that there are parentheses around each scientific notation. Okay, that is, they are not there for decoration. If you do not type the parentheses into the calculator, you will get the wrong answer. I'll say that again. If you do not type these parentheses exactly the way you see them into the calculator, you will get the wrong answer every time. You must type the parentheses. Okay, well, Miss Andrews, I don't see any parentheses when it's written in fraction form. Well, that's because in fraction form, you can visually see the separation in the order of operations between everything on top is together, everything on bottom is together. However, your calculator does not know that when you hit the divide key, that it's dividing by the 8 and the 10 to the third. So what you need to do in fraction form, and they're not written, is you need to type in parentheses. And what I would suggest you do is go into your homework. Let me pull this up here. go into your homework and every single problem that's written as a fraction, draw in parentheses around the numerators and denominators to remind you and reinforce that you have to type parentheses. So you can see in number 2 on the homework that I did, I wrote out what I typed. You don't have to write this out. I just wrote it out so you could see what I typed. So for this problem, I typed parenthesis 9 times 10 caret to make my exponent of 6, close my parenthesis, divided by open parenthesis 3 times 10 caret 2. Okay? If you don't type the parentheses, you will get the wrong answer. Okay? So be super careful of that. Okay, so if I'm going to type in this problem, I'm going to type 4, I didn't even do it. Parenthesis 4 times 10 caret 6, close parenthesis. Then the divide key, open parenthesis, 8 times 10 caret 3, close parenthesis. Now my calculator, I'm going to write down what the calculator said. The calculator said 500. That's not the answer I'm going to put on the answer line. Remember, the calculator is giving you answers unless they are really, really long numbers. Calculator is going to give you standard form by default. You are responsible for taking what's on the calculator and making it scientific notation. So that means putting a decimal after the first digit, 5 times 10 to the second power. Our next problem is written in 2 different forms, scientific notation divided by standard notation. Now, technically, you could convert the first one to standard notation and this one to scientific, make them both the same. But to be honest, I'm sure you guys will just type them in exactly the way you see them. 2.4. Let me back up. Parenthesis 2.4 times 10 caret negative 4, close parenthesis, the divide key, open parenthesis, 2 million, close parenthesis. Now this ends up being an answer that's so long that the calculator actually tells you the answer because it's just too many digits to fill the screen. Okay. Now this is our school calculator. You might have a calculator on your phone or something that has, or a different calculator at home that displays more decimal places and it might not give you the scientific notation. Okay. So just so we're clear on the homework here, we got parentheses around each thing. The next thing I want to talk about is the word problems. Okay? When you're doing the word problems, let me scratch that. The first set of problems when we're going 1 through 18. 1 through 18, the problem is written for you. You know whether it's a multiply problem or a divide problem because it's written. On a word problem, nowhere in these sentences does it specifically say divide. Okay, so you have to figure that out. Now, I'm going to give you a couple strategies, one in each problem. The first one talks about a spacecraft leaving Earth orbit at a speed of 7 times 10 to the 5th kilometers per day. To travel from Earth to Saturn, the craft needed to travel a total distance of 1.4 times 10 to the 9th kilometers. How long will it take the spacecraft to reach Saturn? Well, I drew a picture, okay? This represents Earth, this represents Saturn, and it said the whole distance was 1.4 times 10 to the 9th. Okay, what it can travel in a day is 7 times 10 to the 5th. That's a piece of the distance, and I want to know how many pieces would there be. So it only makes sense if I know the whole and I know a piece to divide. Okay, but I'm not just writing the answer on my homework paper. When you turn in your homework paper tomorrow, I expect to see that you wrote what you typed on the calculator. In other words, you wrote the problem you did, that it's a division problem. Which number went first, which number went second. That matters a lot less in a multiply problem, but in a divide problem, it really matters which number you put first. Okay? Understand the calculator is probably going to give you a number in standard form unless the answer is really big and doesn't fit the screen. And you're going to have to convert to scientific notation. Okay? Number 21, I'm also going to do. The world population is about 7 billion. Okay, well, automatically, that's not scientific notation or a number. So the first thing I did was write out 7 billion as a standard number. You could have written it in scientific notation, too. You could have written 7 times 10 to the 9th. Okay? But many more of you probably know that billion has 9 zeros. There are 4.6 times 10 to the 7th ants for every human on the planet. About how many ants are there in the world? Well, when we did this in class, sometimes kids get really focused on the numbers instead of visualizing what's happening in the problem. So I said, well, what if we just talked about our class? And we said there's roughly 20 people in the class, and what if for every 20 people there were 5, or for every one person in the class, there were 5 ants? Well, that means that for just me, there would be 5 ants. And just Mrs. Smith, that would be 5 more ants. That's 10. So for every person in the room, that's 5 ants. So that ends up being multiply that makes sense. So you'll notice that I wrote a multiply problem. And then I would put that into the calculator and get an answer and go from there. But I'm just wanting to stress that you need to write down what problem you did, and sometimes it's easier to make up smaller regular numbers in the problem to help you figure out whether it's multiply or divide. Okay? I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.